He inherited a house from a grandfather he never met. It stood alone on a hill, surrounded by dead trees. The front door was unlocked, as if waiting for him. Inside, everything was covered in thick layers of dust. He found old portraits, but none showed his grandfather's face. The basement door creaked open by itself the first night. He didn't go down, not then. Strange knocking started every night at exactly 2:33 a.m. He checked the doors and windows. Nothing was outside. One night, he shouted, "Who's there?" into the darkness. The knocking stopped only to begin again from inside. He found scratch marks behind the grandfather clock. They were deep, like from nails or claws. He started having dreams of a man with no face. The man whispered in reverse, he couldn't understand him. Each morning, he woke with dirt under his fingernails. One day, he found an old key in his pillowcase. It matched a small metal box locked in the attic. Inside the box was a letter in shaky handwriting. It read, "Don't trust the mirrors. They remember him." He looked around and realized the house had many mirrors. None of them showed his reflection quite right. In one, he blinked, but his reflection didn't. He smashed it, but the glass bled instead of breaking. That night, he heard footsteps in the attic. When he checked, the door was open and cold air poured out. He felt watched, even though the room was empty. Then he saw it, another version of himself in the mirror. It smiled, even though he didn't. He ran, but every room now had a mirror. They all showed different versions of him, some cruel, some terrified. One mirror showed him sleeping peacefully, but he was awake. He covered the mirrors with blankets and towels. Still, he heard whispers echoing from behind the glass. He called a priest, who refused to enter the house. "This place remembers," the priest said. "More than you ever will." He researched his grandfather and found nothing in public records. The town's oldest librarian looked at him with pity. "He came back once," she said, "but it wasn't really him." Back home, he saw the mirror in his hallway was uncovered. His reflection waved before he did. That night, he chained the basement door shut. But the next morning, the chain was inside the basement. He knew he had to go down. The stairs were longer than before, stretching into the dark. He used his phone light, the signal vanished. At the bottom was a stone room with no doors. In the center, a mirror stood on a black altar. His reflection there was younger and smiling. It whispered, "You left me down here." He stumbled back, heart racing, but there was no way out. Then the walls started closing slowly, silently. He screamed, but the sound died before reaching the ceiling. The mirror cracked, and he fell into darkness. He woke in his bed, the house silent again. But his reflection still smiled when he didn't. Everything felt almost normal, but not quite. He called his sister. She said he died last year. He checked his ID, it was blank. He tried leaving the house but always ended up back inside. The clock stopped at 2:33 a.m. permanently. The mirrors no longer showed anything, just blackness. Every night, someone knocked from inside the walls. He knocked back once, and something knocked twice in return. He stopped sleeping. He no longer dreamed. His eyes darkened, his voice changed. One night, the reflection stepped out of the mirror. It looked more alive than him. The reflection said, "You're free now," and walked out the door. He ran to the mirror, but it was empty. Now he waits in the glass, trapped and forgotten. When someone moves into the house, he watches silently, waiting for them to see him and trade places. Because the house never lets anyone leave completely. It only lets someone else come in. And the mirrors always remember every face they've ever kept. He began talking to the mirrors, hoping for a response. Sometimes, they whispered back, but never in his voice. One night, the mirror called him by his childhood nickname. He hadn't heard it in years, and never told the house. He smashed another mirror, but shards crawled back into place. He burned one, but it returned in the morning unharmed. He tried writing a letter to himself and placed it outside. The next day, it returned, written in blood and reversed. He found a photograph under the floorboards. It showed him, smiling. But the photo was dated 50 years before he was born. He marked days on the wall, but they vanished overnight. His voice sounded hollow, like it echoed from far away. The shadows in the corners moved when he blinked. He laughed once, and something else laughed with him. One day, he stopped casting a shadow altogether. He watched through the mirror as another man approached the house. He screamed, warning him, but the mirror swallowed his voice. The door opened for the new man, just like before. And the house prepared to remember him too. I woke up in the middle of the night, drenched in cold sweat. There was no sound, just a heavy silence pressing against the walls. I reached for my phone, but the screen stayed black and lifeless. The clock on the wall had stopped at exactly 3:03 a.m. I felt like something was watching me from the shadows of my room. I turned on the light, but it flickered and died immediately. My heart raced. I grabbed a flashlight and walked into the hallway. The air was dense, like the house was holding its breath. A strange noise echoed from the living room, a soft, dragging sound. I stepped carefully, trying not to make a sound myself. The sound stopped as soon as I entered the living room. Nothing moved. But my reflection in the window blinked, and I didn't. I stumbled back, confused, heart pounding louder in my chest. I ran to the front door, but the lock was jammed. My hands shook as I tried to open it again and again. Suddenly, I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, steady, deliberate. But I lived alone. No one should be there. I crept to the staircase, shining the flashlight upward. The hallway above was swallowed in darkness, nothing visible beyond the top step. I called out, "Who's there?" My voice sounded weak and distant. No answer. Only a faint creaking, like someone shifting their weight. I climbed the stairs, one at a time, trying not to breathe. As I reached the top, the flashlight flickered and buzzed. A door at the end of the hall slowly creaked open by itself. I wanted to run, but my legs felt rooted to the floor. The door revealed my old bedroom untouched for years. I stepped inside, flashlight shaking in my hand. On the bed lay a mirror, old, cracked, but strangely glowing. I looked into it, and saw myself standing behind me. I turned around, but no one was there. When I looked back, the reflection was smiling. I wasn't. It raised a hand slowly and pointed behind me again. I turned faster this time, still nothing. Just silence. But the reflection now looked afraid, mouthing silent words I couldn't hear. I leaned closer. The glass surface rippled like water. Then, without warning, a cold hand grabbed my shoulder. I spun around, the hallway was empty once again. The door behind me slammed shut with a deafening bang. I ran to it, pulled, pushed, but it wouldn't move. The mirror's glow grew stronger, casting dancing shadows across the room. I heard whispers, soft and sharp, circling me from nowhere. They repeated my name over and over, faster each time. I dropped the flashlight. It rolled, revealing a figure in the corner. He looked exactly like me, same face, same clothes, same fear. But his eyes were pitch black, and he smiled too wide. He spoke without moving his mouth, "You shouldn't have come back." I backed away, but hit the wall. The room began to shift. Walls stretched, the ceiling twisted, the floor turned to smoke. I stumbled toward the mirror, now pulsing like a heartbeat. Without thinking, I reached out and touched the glass. A pulling sensation grabbed my arm and yanked me forward. Suddenly I was falling, spinning through endless darkness. I landed in a hallway that looked like mine, but wrong. Everything was mirrored, left was right, right was left. The pictures on the wall were of me, but slightly off. In one photo, I was missing my eyes. In another, I was smiling while standing beside a coffin. I kept walking, afraid to stop. The hallway never seemed to end, doors kept appearing and vanishing. One door opened by itself, revealing a room full of clocks. Each clock ticked backward, and none matched the others. I stepped inside, and all the clocks stopped at once. A voice whispered, "Time doesn't move the same here." I turned around, the door had vanished. Now there was only a window, looking into my real house. I saw myself asleep in bed, breathing slowly. I banged on the glass, screaming, but the figure didn't wake. Then, slowly, my sleeping self opened his eyes and stared at me. He smiled the same too wide smile as before. Behind him, a shadow leaned closer, whispering something into his ear. He sat up, turned toward the window, and reached out his hand. I pressed my palm to the glass, hoping for escape. But the moment our hands touched, he pulled me inside. Suddenly, I was back in my room, or so I thought. Everything looked normal. The lights worked, the clock was ticking. I sighed in relief until I noticed the mirror. It was still glowing, still cracked, still humming with energy. I covered it with a sheet and backed away. I opened the front door, it creaked normally this time. I stepped outside into the cold morning air. Neighbors were walking their dogs like nothing had happened. But something felt wrong. Everything looked slightly too perfect. I walked down the street, unsure of where to go. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, "You're still not alone." I turned slowly and saw my reflection in a store window. It wasn't moving. It just stood there, smiling again. I blinked. It didn't. I ran. In 2008, satellite imagery from a military weather satellite showed a small town in northern Montana that didn't exist on any map. No roads led in or out, and no registered population was ever recorded. The town appeared fully formed, houses, a school, even traffic. But the next day, it was gone. Replaced by open fields and forest. The coordinates were logged. When a survey team arrived, they found one strange thing, a mailbox in the middle of an empty field. Inside was a postcard dated 1971. It read, "Still Point is safe. We'll stay as long as they let us." No one knew what Still Point referred to. Until an archivist found a declassified document from 1972 labeled Project Stillpoint, Temporal Settlement Prototype. It described a military experiment to create a self-contained town outside of linear time. The objective: test what happens when a population no longer experiences cause and effect. Participants were told they were part of a long-term relocation program. They lived normally, unaware that time didn't move forward in Stillpoint. It only circled. The test was terminated in 1976. But no records confirmed evacuation. Only one line: subject behavior stable. Loop holding. The town was never officially found again. Until 2008, when the satellite caught it for 11 seconds. That same week, a 10-year-old boy in Montana drew a perfect street map of Stillpoint, with store names, house layouts, and a sign that read, "You are here, but not yet." His family had never been near the site. When asked how he knew, the boy said, "I used to live there. Then they made me forget." The drawing has since faded. The original satellite footage was lost in a server crash. But one photo survived. In the bottom right corner, scrawled in pen, the town didn't disappear. It just stopped happening. I woke up to silence. The town was gone. The streets were flooded, yet the sky was clear. No wind, no birds, just a deep, humming stillness. I stepped outside and water touched my boots. The lake had risen, swallowing everything around. But there was no panic, no people, no signs. Just still water, and my own faint reflection. I walked toward the edge of the submerged road. Mailboxes stuck from water like forgotten tombstones. He stood there, still, soaked, and staring at me. His coat dripped slowly, though the air was dry. His eyes were hollow, but they followed my steps. I called out, but he didn't move or answer. I turned back, but my house was no longer there. Only more water, stretching endlessly behind me. He pointed toward the lake, then lowered his hand. I asked who he was. He smiled and vanished. His boots left no ripples where he stood. I followed the sound of quiet splashing ahead. The water grew colder with every careful step. A child's toy floated by, cracked and burned. No children had lived here for 20 years. I knew that, because I had buried mine. The lake took them when the storm came early. I had tried to save them, but I failed. Since then, I never left. The guilt kept me. But now something was calling me deeper inside. The lake shimmered like glass, reflecting nothing above. I saw his silhouette again, far across the water. He raised one arm slowly, beckoning without urgency. My legs moved on their own, heavy but certain. I passed by familiar rooftops under the surface. My memories floated up like bubbles, then popped. The water pulled at my chest, whispering names. Not mine, my children's, my wife's, my own. It knew them, and it called them gently. Suddenly, I wasn't cold. I wasn't afraid either. I was no longer walking, I was sinking. But it felt like falling into a soft dream. He waited for me at the bottom, smiling again. His hand reached out, and this time I took it. I saw what he saw: everything, everyone, forever. We weren't trapped. We were watching. Waiting. Years passed like fog over glass. Others came. Some screamed. Some cried. Most just followed, like I had, without question. I watched a boy drop a flashlight into the lake. He paused, then saw me. And he ran. That boy became a man, and came back. He was older, but the fear was the same. He built a cabin on the edge, far from town. Every night, he lit candles and spoke to the water. He asked questions I couldn't answer anymore. He spoke my name, but I had forgotten it. We weren't meant to return once we crossed. But he insisted. He kept calling for weeks. One night, I stood again at the surface. The lake pushed me up, like a breath released. I walked to his door, dripping, confused, calm. He opened it. He cried. He thought I was saved. But I didn't speak. I couldn't remember how. I just looked at him, and waited for the lake. He followed me, slowly, like a sleepwalker does. We stood at the water's edge in silence. He asked, "Will it hurt?" I didn't know. He stepped forward anyway, and the lake accepted him. Two more stood now, waiting beside me below. Each with a story, each with someone who called. The lake grows deeper with every broken heart. It keeps memories like sunken stones, never rising. Sometimes the wind returns, and the sky cries. Then more people disappear, chasing what they lost. I don't remember my home anymore. I only remember the lake, and his eyes. I think he was me, but I'm not sure. Maybe we all become someone else in the end. Maybe this is what forgiveness feels like. Or maybe we're all still falling, very slowly. The Man in the Fog. He woke up in a small cabin with no memory of yesterday. The fog outside was thick, hiding everything beyond the wooden door. He stepped outside, hearing only the sound of birds far away. The trees were tall and silent, watching him without judgment. His name was Jack, or at least he thought it was. There was a photo in his pocket, a woman smiling with him. He didn't remember her, but she looked familiar and kind. The cabin had no phone, no radio, just old dusty books. One book was open on the table, its pages torn and wet. The words inside were written in red ink, "Find the mirror." He looked around the room again, searching for a hidden mirror. Under a loose floorboard, he found a small, cracked glass. As he looked into it, his reflection blinked before he did. Startled, he dropped the mirror, and it shattered on the floor. From the cracks, a dark mist crawled out, whispering his name. "Jack, remember who you are," the mist seemed to say. His heart pounded as he stumbled back into the fog outside. He walked down a path he hadn't noticed before. The fog seemed to follow him, curling around his legs. He saw a house in the distance, lights flickering weakly. Inside, a woman waited, her face hidden in shadow. She said, "You don't remember, but you made a promise." He asked, "Who are you?" but she only smiled sadly. She pointed to the wall where his name was carved in wood. "I waited for you," she whispered, "but you never came." He touched the carving, it burned hot under his fingers. Memories came back in flashes, fire, screams, a falling tower. He saw the woman again, crying beside a ruined mirror. "You left me," her voice echoed through his mind. "I had to," he said aloud, though no one was near. The fog grew thicker, wrapping around the house like a veil. The woman stepped into the mist and disappeared silently. He ran outside, calling her name, but no answer came. His feet led him to a grave with no name on it. A mirror lay beside it, whole and shining in the moonlight. He picked it up and saw not himself, but her face. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he whispered, "I remember now." She was his wife, lost in a fire he caused long ago. He had tried to save her but failed and ran into the woods. The fog had taken his memory as punishment for his fear. Now, the fog wanted him to choose, forget or remember forever. He chose to remember, clutching the mirror tightly in his hands. The grave opened slowly, and light poured out from within. He stepped into the light, feeling warmth and sorrow together. Inside, he saw moments of their life, happy and real. Laughter in summer, kisses in rain, and dancing in candlelight. The light dimmed, and he was alone again, but changed. He walked back to the cabin, knowing what he must do. He lit a fire in the hearth and opened the old book. Writing filled the empty pages, telling his story now. He added one line, "I remember her, and I forgive myself." The fog began to lift, letting in soft morning light. He looked into the new mirror on the wall, clear and true. His eyes were tired, but they held peace he hadn't known. The woman appeared again, not a ghost, but a memory. She smiled, nodded once, and turned into a golden breeze. Jack stepped outside, breathing deeply for the first time in years. The forest was alive now, with birds singing and sun shining. He followed a path he had once feared, now ready to walk it. The mirror stayed behind, reflecting a man who had healed. He died in 1978. But his name still echoed through the small mountain town. Locals whispered about him, especially after the sun went down. He had been a mailman, always polite, always on time. Then one day, he simply vanished without a trace. His bag was found in the woods, letters still inside. They searched the hills for weeks, no sign of him. A year later, letters began arriving with his handwriting. Postmarked from the same town, but no one sent them. Each letter warned of cold eyes watching from the trees. Some laughed it off until people started disappearing. Their homes undisturbed, their cars parked, just gone. Only one thing was always left behind, a sealed envelope. Inside, each one read, "He walks with your name now." One man followed the trail into the woods. He found a jacket half buried in moss. It was still warm, as if just taken off. Then he saw him, standing perfectly still, smiling. He looked the same as in old newspaper photos. Except now his eyes were pale and glassy. The man turned to run, but lost his way. He was never found, just like the others. Some say the dead man returns every 10 years. He finds a name, wears it, and walks freely. His footsteps don't leave prints. Dogs refuse to bark when he passes. He knocks only once on the door. If you answer, he takes your name. The old sheriff still remembers the first disappearances. He kept one of the strange envelopes for years. One day he burned it and vanished that night. His boots were left by the fireplace. Now, hikers see someone in a blue mail coat. He walks with no flashlight, even in thick fog. He hums an old postman's tune, out of key. A woman saw him outside her cabin window. He waved, then disappeared into a tree trunk. People say he lives between moments, not places. He remembers names, faces, and unfinished deliveries. When you hear knocking without echo, stay silent. If you hear your name spoken twice, run. A boy once joked and invited him inside. His parents woke up, but their son didn't. On his bed lay an old letter with no words. The mailman's ghost is patient. He never stops looking. He likes quiet homes with few lights on. He's drawn to forgotten places and lonely voices. The dead man once delivered love letters. Now he delivers silence. They say his face changes slightly with each name. But the eyes never change. They are always empty. One hunter shot him and swore he bled shadows. He dropped his gun and ran till dawn. He never hunted again, or spoke of that day. A young man took a photo near the forest. Behind him was someone blurry in a male hat. The figure wasn't there in real life. But everyone who sees the photo dreams of him. He stands at the foot of their bed, watching. The dreams stop only when the photo is burned. Still, some people keep it out of fear. Others believe the dead man was cursed, not cruel. That he never meant to become what he is. But the curse needs names to stay alive. And someone always opens the door. He was last seen outside an empty bus stop. A traveler waved, thinking he was a guide. The traveler was never seen again. His suitcase arrived at the hotel without him. Inside was a letter with his own name written. The police report was quietly closed, never explained. Now the town avoids the woods after sunset. Children are taught to never say their names aloud. A new mail route was added last year. No one applied, but someone still does the job. Letters keep arriving without senders or stamps. Some residents return them unopened, most are too afraid. One woman opened hers and screamed. Inside was a photo of her future grave. It showed today's date carved into the stone. No one saw her again after nightfall. The post office now locks its doors before dark. But sometimes mail still appears on desks by morning. No one sees who brings it in. Just the faint scent of moss and smoke remains. If you visit the town, don't open strange letters. And never, ever answer the knock if it's only once. Because he walks with someone's name and he may want yours next. One night, a man heard footsteps circling his cabin. He stayed quiet, heart pounding, holding his breath. A single envelope slid under his door. He opened it slowly, hands shaking, eyes wide. Inside was a mirror, cracked, but reflecting nothing. Behind him, the floor creaked, though no one entered. He ran into the woods and never came back. Now people find mirrors in odd places outside. Always cracked, always cold, always facing toward home. The dead man still walks, but now he watches closer. In 1992, a scientific team arrived in northern Canada for research. They were studying rapid temperature changes near a frozen lake. The lake had no name, just coordinates and warnings. Locals called it the Red Lake, though no one knew why. Satellite images showed strange patterns forming under the surface. Something geometric, sharp lines under layers of untouched ice. The team set up equipment 200 meters from the center. They installed thermal drills, seismic readers, and underwater sonar devices. Everything worked perfectly until they touched the ice. The power cut out for exactly 12 minutes and 6 seconds. When systems came back, logs were wiped, data unreadable. Only one audio file remained, simply named ice_call.wave. It was faint, like static, then a deep tone. Then a voice whispered in English, "Not yet, go back." The voice was analyzed. It wasn't from any team member. But it matched a recording from 1971, a missing hiker. That man disappeared in the same area without a trace. The team decided to continue drilling despite warnings and interference. At 37 meters deep, the ice turned crimson red. One scientist collapsed while watching the live video feed. He claimed the ice was watching him from inside out. They paused the mission but left cameras running overnight. At 3:14 a.m., something triggered all seismic sensors simultaneously. Cameras recorded shadows moving under the surface against physics. The lake began humming. The ice vibrated without cracking. At sunrise, one researcher had vanished from his tent. His footprints led onto the lake and stopped abruptly. No cracks. No holes. Just perfect, solid, red ice. A thermal camera revealed a faint heat signature below. It was human-shaped, curled, like someone sleeping under glass. They dropped a sensor. It never reached the bottom. Instead, it floated mid-water, unable to descend farther down. The screen showed something faint behind it, symmetrical movement. Not a fish. Not a person. Something far too large. Then the screen went black. Only the heartbeat monitor remained. It pulsed rapidly, like something was mimicking human vitals. They tried to leave, but their snowmobiles wouldn't start. The radios played distorted versions of their own voices. One said, "We are beneath you. Don't bring others." Two team members began speaking in perfect unison. They recited coordinates that led back to the lake. One tried to flee and vanished into the treeline. The rest were extracted by airlift 24 hours later. Their footage was seized by a private security contractor. They were told never to speak about Red Lake. One researcher later leaked a still frame from the video. It showed something rising under the ice, massive and coiled. But the ice above it never cracked or shifted. He claimed the lake was not a place, but a seal. A pressure lock. A biological vault holding something ancient. The coordinates were erased from public satellite systems completely. But some maps still show faint red distortion at zoom. Locals refuse to camp near the area ever again. They say at night, the lake hums and breathes. Sometimes they see red reflections even when water is frozen. A woman once claimed to see her missing brother there. He walked on the ice, then vanished in fog. She followed him but passed out from hypothermia instantly. Her shoes were dry, but her heartbeat had changed. It now beat in reverse rhythm, doctors couldn't explain. All research stations in the region were later shut down. The final log entry from the Red Lake team said, "We woke something that remembers what it once was." The ice sample taken from 37 meters turned black. And then melted, despite being stored at -40 Celsius. Its residue interfered with electronics for 11 straight minutes. A new tone was detected inside the melting ice. It matched no known pattern, but resembled sonar speech. One word translated across all software, "remember." A Canadian intelligence memo labeled the event type Red Origin. It was stamped with one final sentence, "Do not revisit." The lake hasn't changed shape in over 30 years. But its color grows more vivid every winter without fail. Some believe it isn't a lake anymore, but an eye. Waiting, frozen shut, watching for those who once woke it. A researcher now missing had this written on his wall. "The deeper we drilled, the more it learned our names." No one has returned to Red Lake since 2005. But the sonar signal still broadcasts once each year. Always on the solstice. Always from the exact same depth. The signal ends with a single whispered phrase, "Not yet. But soon." Echo Archives will keep listening, but never answering. She moved into the old cottage at the edge of the silent forest. The villagers warned her not to live there after sunset. But she liked the quiet and ignored their strange looks. Every evening, the forest filled with soft whispers she couldn't explain. One night, she followed the sound deeper into the woods. The trees grew denser, and the path disappeared behind her. She turned around, but the way back was completely gone. The whispers got louder, like someone calling her name softly. She wasn't scared, not yet, only curious. Then she saw a figure between the trees, standing perfectly still. It looked just like her, same face, same clothes, same eyes. Her double smiled and stepped back into the shadows. She chased it, heart racing, branches scratching her arms. The deeper she went, the colder the air became. Eventually, she reached a clearing with a stone circle. In the center stood an old mirror, tall and cracked. Her reflection blinked, even though she hadn't. The mirror shimmered, showing a different version of her house. Inside it, everything was clean, bright, and peaceful. She reached out and touched the glass with shaking fingers. Suddenly, her hand passed through the surface like water. She gasped but felt no pain, only a gentle pull. Then the whispers returned, louder now, urging her to step through. She hesitated, then stepped fully into the mirror. The world behind her vanished in a blur of light. She stood now in the same house, but it felt wrong. Everything was too perfect, too quiet, like a painting. She walked through the rooms, searching for something familiar. A photo on the wall showed her, but smiling strangely. The version of her in the photo had eyes too wide. She heard footsteps upstairs, even though no one else lived here. She followed the sound, heart pounding with each step. In the bedroom, she found someone sleeping in her bed. It was her, peacefully sleeping, unaware of anything. She tried to wake the sleeping version, but couldn't touch her. Her hand passed through like smoke, leaving no mark. Suddenly, the sleeping girl opened her eyes and stared at her. But those weren't her eyes, they were black and endless. The sleeping version sat up slowly, still staring at her. Then she smiled, too wide, too empty, too cold. "I've been waiting," the reflection said, without moving her lips. She stumbled back, terrified, and ran from the room. The hallway twisted as she moved, now longer than before. Doors appeared where there were none, leading to strange places. One opened to a forest burning in silence. Another showed a clock spinning backward with no hands. A third opened to complete darkness with whispering voices. She slammed it shut and kept running down the hallway. At the end, she saw the mirror again, pulsing softly. She reached it, hoping to return to her world. But this time, the surface was solid and cold. She pounded on it, screaming, but no sound came. Behind her, the black-eyed version stood, smiling calmly. "You chose this," the reflection whispered. "Now I live instead." The mirror flickered, showing her old house again. Her reflection waved from inside, wearing her life-like clothing. She fell to her knees as the world dimmed. The house began to dissolve into ash around her. Only the mirror and the other version remained. She tried to remember her name but couldn't. She was becoming a shadow, forgotten and fading. The reflection turned away and closed the curtains. Now she could only watch through a distant haze. The new version of her lived happily in her place. No one outside noticed the change, not even her friends. She screamed again, but no one could hear her. Only the forest whispered back, remembering her voice. Seasons passed, but the mirror stayed cold and locked. She became part of the cottage's walls, silent, waiting. At night, new whispers filled the forest air again. Another girl arrived, looking for peace and quiet. She smiled at the house and entered without fear. The mirror shimmered faintly as the door closed behind her. And somewhere deep inside, the shadow stirred awake again. The circle was complete, waiting for another name to forget. But something deep inside her refused to fade completely. She focused on the sound of her own heartbeat, faint, but there. The walls of the cottage pulsed like a living thing. She whispered her name, even if no one remembered it. Somewhere, she hoped, a part of her still existed outside. The mirror trembled slightly, just for a second. She stood up from the ashes, more shadow than flesh now. In the corner, a crack appeared in the glass. The black-eyed version looked over her shoulder, confused. For the first time, fear touched her reflection's face. The trapped girl moved closer, voice growing stronger. I am not gone. I am not yours. The cottage shook as whispers turned into voices. Other shadows stirred, ones who were trapped before her. Together, they pushed against the walls of this false world. The reflection screamed, light bursting from her eyes. The mirror shattered, releasing a wave of darkness and wind. She was pulled through it, screaming, burning with memory. When she opened her eyes, it was morning. And the real world was waiting, quiet, but not safe. I woke up to a silent morning. I was alone in my small bedroom. No birds. No wind. No cars outside. I looked out my window, confused and nervous. The street was empty. Completely empty and quiet. Usually, the bakery opens early. Today, it was dark. I put on shoes and stepped outside alone. The air felt heavy, like a warning. I walked down the road, calling for someone. Hello? Anyone there? Only silence answered. My neighbor's house was gone. Just grass remained. I rubbed my eyes, thinking it was a dream. But no, the mailbox was floating midair. I turned to run, but my house disappeared. Where I stood became a field of fog. Something was clearly wrong with this place. A sound echoed, like static from old TVs. It came from behind, but nothing was there. I whispered, "What is happening to me?" The fog moved closer, wrapping around my feet. I forced myself to move, step by step. Shadows flickered inside the fog, just out of reach. I followed a narrow path between the trees. Strange symbols were glowing on the ground. They pulsed with light as I walked by. The path ended at a broken wooden sign. The letters read, "Welcome to Nowhere." I had never seen this place before. Still, it felt oddly familiar somehow. A figure appeared, sitting on an old bench. It wore a long coat and a hat. "Been expecting you," the figure said calmly. I asked, "Where is everyone? What's happening?" The figure pointed toward the fog again. "This town is being erased," he answered. "Why?" I asked, feeling fear grow inside. "Because someone broke the rule," he replied. "What rule?" I asked, voice barely steady. He looked at me but said nothing. Instead, he handed me a black notebook. "Everything is written here," he said. I opened it, pages were blank. Suddenly, words appeared across the paper. "You were never supposed to return here." I dropped the notebook in shock. "I don't remember being here before." "You forgot," the man said with sadness. "You chose to forget what you did." I shook my head. "What did I do?" He looked away and vanished like smoke. I stood alone, notebook still glowing faintly. I turned the page and saw drawings. Each one showed the town slowly fading. My house, the bakery, even my school. They disappeared one by one in ink. This book showed the future or past. I kept walking, unsure what was real. A mirror stood in the middle path. I looked inside and saw two reflections. One was me. The other smiled darkly. The second me reached out and waved. I stepped back, but the mirror cracked. Pieces fell like glass into the fog. My hand was bleeding, but not real. No pain. No warmth. Just red illusion. The fog parted, revealing the old school. I entered, halls empty and full of echoes. My name was scratched into a locker. I didn't remember doing that at all. Voices whispered behind classroom doors. I opened one, desks floated midair. Children sat silently, eyes glowing white. They turned to look at me together. You left us, they all said. I didn't. I shouted, stepping backward fast. You forgot us, the whispering continued. Suddenly, the walls began melting like wax. I ran through the hallway, breath shaking. The exit door led to darkness only. I lit my phone screen to see. The light revealed a staircase going down. I followed it, step after step downward. The notebook still glowed in my pocket. It grew heavier with every floor passed. Finally, a door appeared with my name. I opened it and saw a bedroom. My own, but older, dusty, and wrong. A photo lay cracked on the desk. It showed me with people I forgot. Tears filled my eyes without a reason. I whispered, "What did I do here?" The walls replied with one word, abandoned. Everything began shaking. The notebook burned hot. I opened it again. One sentence remained. You can stay and disappear, or remember. I screamed, remember what? Please tell me. The room turned white, blinding, endless white. Then, silence. Just breathing. My own breath. I opened my eyes. It was morning. Birds chirped. Sunlight warmed my room again. I sat up slowly, heart pounding hard. Everything looked normal, but something felt off. I opened my closet. The notebook was there. Its cover read, "Welcome back to nowhere." In 2017, a blackout struck a train station in Italy. Only one camera kept working unplugged and offline. The footage showed a man on platform 3. He stood perfectly still for exactly 1 hour. No one approached him. No one noticed him. He stared at the arrival board, never blinking once. He didn't move. Not even a twitch or breath. His skin looked smooth, pale, almost like frosted glass. When zoomed in, he had no eyes or mouth. Just a blank face, like someone forgot the details. They called him the Glass Man after that night. The camera shouldn't have been working at all. It wasn't plugged in, but the footage recorded anyway. The timestamp read 3:33 a.m. to 4:33. Exactly 1 hour. No motion detected. No trains arrived. Platform 3 was under maintenance and officially closed. But there he stood, alone, under broken lights. When security paused the video, something strange happened instantly. The screen flickered, and the room grew noticeably cold. In the paused frame, the man was suddenly gone. but in his place, the viewer's own reflection. It matched their posture, clothes, but the face was blank. Just like his. No eyes. No mouth. Nothing. A technician blacked out after trying to extract the file. He woke up 4 minutes later, face down. On the screen, one message, "Do not see me." The glass man began appearing on other nights. Always 3:33 to 4:33. Always platform 3. He never moved. But he never left either. Thermal scans showed nothing. Motion sensors stayed silent. Yet the camera kept capturing him. Every time. Each appearance looked identical, same posture, same stillness. Even the shadows around him stayed exactly the same. The only variation? His head tilted slightly more. As if he was listening for something behind him. Eventually, the station sealed off Platform 3 entirely. Official reason: ongoing structural instability and renovation delays. But staff still reported movement behind the boarded doors. One janitor quit after seeing footsteps in the dust. No one had entered in days. No explanation given. A ministry report labeled it Type G reflection anomaly. It recommended memory suppression and full footage deletion. But someone saved the video and leaked it online. It was titled Glassman_full_replay_V4_final_forget. The clip plays for 1 hour. Exactly. At first, nothing happens, just silence and stillness. But around minute 47, the camera begins to shake. The lights flicker. The glassman turns slightly left. He lifts one hand slowly toward the lens. Then the screen cuts to black for 3 seconds. When it comes back, he's inches from the camera. There's still no face. But the screen feels alive. A low static sound pulses in sync with your breath. Then a final frame appears, glowing red with text. You saw him. Now he sees you. Since the video appeared, dozens of users reported symptoms. Sudden dizziness, nosebleeds, and vivid dreams of train stations. Most dreams happen at 3:33 a.m., exact to the minute. In each one, people wake standing on Platform 3. The train never arrives. But he's always waiting there. Some claim he now follows them in reflections. Not all mirrors, just ones older than 20 years. They say his outline appears behind them, slightly distorted. And when they turn, there's nothing there, only cold. One viewer covered all mirrors in his house. He claimed the glass man whispered behind the glass. Don't stop watching. If you stop, I'll move. No one knows where the footage came from originally. The station denies all claims and destroyed the platform. But archived blueprints show a sublevel beneath track 3. It was never open to the public or staff. A sealed hallway runs directly beneath the platform zone. The last line on the blueprint is handwritten in red. Subject 3G1. Observation window secured. Movement outside expected. Was the glassman real or part of something else? A test, a breach, or something older than explanation? Echo Archives continues to investigate the footage source. But one thing is certain, and cannot be denied. If you pause the video at 3:33:17, the glass man's head turns. And he looks at you.